and before I get off. There you go. See, you're awesome. All right.
I recognize
Sure
her.
am.
I didn't mean you, Kathy. I meant the little robot.
All right. I'm getting my face off of here, but we'll be listening. So
Okay.
thanks.
All right. So today we are lucky enough to have Dr. Bret Heller speak to us about what's going on with Thompson School District. I want to tell you first, Dr. Heller, that I really appreciate your guest opinion in the Reporter Herald the other day, asking and hoping that adults create a model that differences don't have to lead to division, that disagreement between people does not have to lead to violence. Here's hoping. Anyway, Dr. Heller, I appreciate that. I know I'm going to trust what you say because of the way you began that article. And if you could begin by introducing yourself and then tell us what's going on. And I have a number of questions later, and some of our people may also.
Well, thank you
So,
very
go ahead.
much. Yeah, thank you all for inviting me and for taking some time tonight. It's a pleasure to jump on here today. My day has been it's been a great day. I started this morning at 7:30 with high school students in the boardroom. I have a student advisory council of high school students, and we met this morning, and they are working on some proposals of things that they want to present in the future to the board in terms of what they'd like to see change with high school, and the conversations they were having makes you hopeful for the future when you listen to young people have conversations, and the types of conversations they were having were amazing, and not just they weren't superficial things that they were talking about. They were talking about deep issues, deep concerns about caring about their classmates and how to make sure their classmates are successful. So it was great. So a little bit about myself. This is my first year in the Thompson School District. My background, I grew up in Idaho. So I'm born and raised really, well, technically I was born in Montana on the Air Force Base, but my family's from Idaho. I spent my entire young life all the way through high school and college in Idaho. And I went to school to become a teacher. And then I moved down. So I grew up in the north part of Idaho, a little town called Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, that some of you may be familiar with. Beautiful, beautiful community that I grew up in. And then I moved down to the Boise area when I got my first teaching job. And so I lived in Boise for 22, 23 years as an educator down there. And I worked for a really large district down in the Boise area called the West Ada School District, which is a school district, I should say, of about 40,000 students, 57 schools. And I worked there, started as a teacher. I became an assistant principal. Then I was a principal. Then eventually I moved into district leadership as a director of curriculum and instruction. And then I became an assistant superintendent. And then my family decided we would just really make a huge leap. And we decided to move across the country. And I became a superintendent in a smaller town called Munster, Indiana. Munster, Indiana is in the northwest corner of Indiana, right across the state line from Chicago. So even though we were in Indiana, we were actually kind of a suburb of Chicago. Many of our families commuted into the city for work every day. And we were there for a few years as the superintendent. My wife and I, we have two younger daughters who are with us. We also have two older daughters who are adults doing their own thing now in life. But we have a 10th grader now and an 8th grader, and they were with us in Munster, Indiana, and we had a great time. We enjoyed it very much. Did a lot of great things in that school district. But I will tell you, though, there was things we loved about being close to Chicago. There was also a lot of things we didn't love about being close to Chicago, and we didn't love the flatness, and we didn't love the humidity. We missed the mountains, and so we started thinking about maybe looking for some place that felt a little bit more like home. And when this particular opening came up and we started doing our research, it felt like a good potential fit for our family and for me professionally, and decided to throw my name in the hat, as you will. And next thing you know, here we are. It's almost October, and I've been in the Thompson School District since July 1. And so I spent a lot of time over the last few months, and will continue to spending a lot of time listening and a lot of time learning, a lot of time asking questions. So I probably many times a day repeat the phrase, "Why do we do it that way?" And I'll tell you, and this is true everywhere I've been, sometimes we have really good answers for why we do it that way. And other times the answer is, well, we're not sure, but we've always done it that way. We talk a lot about, if we don't have a good reason why we do it, then we probably should investigate whether the reason, whether it's working, and whether the way we're doing things is the right way to continue to do things. And we're doing having a lot of those conversations right now. And I'm so impressed with the people, both within the Thompson School District, but almost just as impressed with the community around the Thompson School District. I had a chance, I visited with, Loveland Rotary, and I've had a chance to visit with Loveland Lions, and I've had a visit with the Kids Pack program. Just the evening before I came to this, we had the pleasure of an exciting open house at our Thompson Career Campus, where we were opening the new pathway for those students who are interested in being emergency medical technicians. So we have a new EMT pathway that just opened this fall. And that pathway is completely because some individuals in Larimer County, in the county commissioner's office, and the Bohemian Foundation came to our aid to help us build an addition to our building. And so these community partners that we have in this place are so impressive. And we really, as a school district, we need those community partners. And so thrilled for the opportunity to join you all tonight as another, group of people in the community who care, not just about the community, but hopefully also about the value that our schools have to the community. And we believe, and I said this today when I was with the Lions, it was the first time ever, Lions, they meet it in the back room at Golden Corral. I've never held a microphone at a Golden Corral before, but I got to give a speech on a microphone at Golden Corral this afternoon. But I told them, I believe that public education has value to a community, even if you don't have kids in our schools, even if you don't have kids or grandkids in our schools, that we provide a value to the community beyond just educating your own children. And so I just appreciate the opportunity to be on here tonight. Happy to answer any questions you all have. I think some of you probably are aware, and if not, maybe tonight I'll make you a little more aware. We do have a bond ballot question in November. So there is a ballot question for the Thompson School District for a bond, which is for basically building facilities and capital improvement needs that we have across the district. So I'm happy to talk more about that if you'd like. I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but I'm open to any questions that any of you would have. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Heller, we have a small group tonight, and I wonder if it might be worthwhile to have each of us who has a question with education just really briefly say what it is. That might make the talk. What do you guys think? That's okay?
Sure.
Tell me if you have a background in education. Carol? Who's?
I'm interested in the election that's coming up, so I would like more information about that.
Okay. Carol, do you have any background? Who has a background in education? Kathy Wilson was a dean in a university, and she focused on education. She started our education team.
Okay.
I've worked in education all my life, community college, so I get it.
Yeah.
But I think there may be others. Gwen?
I come in from the parent volunteer perspective. When I was in Jefferson County, I sat on the accountability committee at the district level. So those important parent volunteers, that's where I come from. Not necessarily educator, but an important community.
Very important. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Anybody else before we go on? Marilyn?
Yes, I was a library media specialist at Berthoud High School. So I worked with Stu Boyd.
Okay, so you know Stu. Okay.
I sure do.
Mm-hmm.
And Carol Rush was in the Pooter, and Dick Rush taught at Thompson Valley.
Yeah.
Okay, and Jill, did you have your hand up?
I started teaching in the bad old days in middle school, and I taught in public, private, and nonprofit. I also, I am the mother of a teacher in the Greeley School District and a grandmother of 8th grader and 3rd grader in a different school district.
Okay.
But I highly value anybody who puts their time and effort into education.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else before we?
I think
Okay,
Kathy had her
Dr.
hand up.
Yeah,
who-
I had a
Okay, Kathy, go ahead.
I had a teaching stint for a while with the federal government teaching adults, but I come from a family of educators. Both my parents were teachers. My dad was a school superintendent, and I have a bunch of teachers in my family, sisters and brothers. Public
great.
school.
Okay. We've all been concerned about the impact of the current administration on public education, of course. Have the cuts under Doge affected your budgets or staffing or anything else?
Well,
Or all of the above?
I hate to say it out loud, so not necessarily yet. I'll say yet. I hope, we continue to hope that that won't happen or it won't come, but I think there's some fear. I'll just be honest. There's a lot of sitting on the edge of our seat wondering what's going to happen next. And a lot of earlier this year, there was a lot of discussions about some funds being withheld by the federal government to the states around education. Most of that, really all of it, has now been released. Finally, those funds were released, and the states are now able to start getting those out. We were really worried, especially around the funding for title funding, which is really for our most at-risk populations, were being withheld. And those weren't just withheld from us. They were being withheld across the entire country, and certain states weren't receiving their money. We have now received those dollars. One of the challenges I think people don't always recognize with those types of things, when those cuts or the withholding of those funds was happening, we don't have the opportunity to say, well, then we're just going to stop providing those services.
Yeah.
Right? Those services are still required by law. The services that we provide with those funds are still required by law. So even if the funding didn't show up, we were still going to have to find a way to make that happen. And we have staffing that is tied up in those dollars, that is used, that is, those people are directly responsible for those services for those students. And so we were working a lot to try to figure out how do we make it through this, and if these dollars don't ever show up. Now they did, and so we're good for now. And I think there's always just a little bit of a fear of what might be around the corner when it comes to this. There certainly is. I don't know. I've said this before. There's become this pattern of almost an intentional effort to undermine public education that is very sad to me, because it's we are the one group when it comes to education who doesn't get to say no to any student. We don't get to turn you away. We don't get to say no, we don't take X. We educate you if you live in our school district and you are walking through our doors. We do everything we can to make sure you walk through our doors every day, that you're attending regularly, and that we're doing our best to try to meet your needs. Other types of education that are often being pushed in favor of public education, they have the opportunity to say no. They have the opportunity to turn kids away if they don't meet the profile that school wants. And so to put public education on the potential chopping block seems really counterintuitive to doing what's best for our country, to establishing a good democracy, to establishing good citizens who are going to move on and be the next adults and leaders of our country. And so I'll fight for public education every day if I have to, and I'll continue to do that. I think it's the most important profession in the world, because I think we are the ones who create all of the other professions in the world. And so we're nervous about what's out there, but we're going to continue every day showing up to do what's best for our kids, to try to make sure that we're meeting those needs. And we may have to get creative down the line as funding becomes different, or as laws and rules start to change. We may have to find creative ways to keep doing that work. But I think I can speak for myself and colleagues across the country who are doing this work. We're committed to fighting the fight to make sure we're taking care of kids.
One of the books that I've been recommending to people is by Kara Fitzpatrick, a Pulitzer Prize winner. It's called The End of Public Education.
Oh, I have not read that yet.
It's really, really a strong.
I'll have to look into that.
Has the end of COVID brought more students back to schools, and have their long delays been overcome? Or can you tell that yet?
Yeah, I'll tell you there. You know, I think we, when I say we, I mean the royal we of education in general across the country, is still feeling some of the effects of the pandemic. Um, there are families who chose to leave public education during the pandemic because they didn't agree with whether it was masks, whether it was the stay-at-home orders, whatever it might be, and they chose other pathways that more aligned with their beliefs. And um, you know, ultimately, I guess I'm okay. Like every parent needs to make the decision that they feel is best for their child. I am not opposed to school choice necessarily. I am opposed to private schools getting public dollars and taking those dollars away from public schools in order to have that choice. But I think every parent should have the choice to put their child in the program, whether it's homeschool, charters, private, whatever it might be. I believe in Thompson, we actually have a lot of choice within our district. We have a lot of different types of schools that meet different needs for different students. And that's a value of the choice that we offer. But yeah, we lost across the country, you know, kids who their parents chose to put them in a different type of learning because of the response during the pandemic. Some have come back because maybe they realized that the option they chose wasn't quite as good. The grass wasn't quite as green as they thought it was on the other side. And so we have seen students coming back. The impact on the students themselves, I think what we continue to still see, especially the youngest kids who started during the pandemic, is they didn't have the opportunity to build some of the interpersonal and social skills that are necessary to thrive in school. And so now as they continue to move forward in their learning, they're behind, it feels like, still in that socializing component and knowing how to, you know, I think maybe as a country, learning how to handle our feelings appropriately, you know, how to use our words appropriately. I think this continues to be a trend we're seeing not just with kids, but with adults as well. Academically, I think we're starting to really start to see the tide turning for us in terms of kids are bouncing back from some of the academic losses that they were showing. I said this again today when I was with the Lions. I said, one of the things I'm really focusing on how we can bolster is for our youngest kids who are learning to read. How do we make sure over the summer they don't regress? How do we make sure we're doing as much summer reading programs, summer opportunities for kids to have books in front of them and to read? Because we see it so often. These kids leave at the end of the school year, and if they aren't reading, if they're not exposed to books and words and all of that, that they do come back with some regression of skill every summer. And now, you know, our job is to continue to move them forward. But yeah, I mean, the pandemic was a challenge. I don't ever want to live through it again. It was the hardest couple of years of my professional career. But I think we are moving forward and bouncing back in many of the good ways that we need to.
I think one of the things you put in your article, which I appreciated, which is success is not just about the grades.
Right.
It's much broader than that.
Yeah.
And at the AAUW, the local American Association, one of our speakers was a woman who has written for thousands of years for young kids. One of her points was about an app never matches a lap.
Yeah.
Anyway, has there been any push to influence curriculum, given the polarization of the country? I used to teach history before I became an administrator, but other fields, other activities aside from that could also be affected. And I wonder if there's been any pressure that you're aware of yet.
Yeah, you know, I will tell you that that kind of it's varying state by state is what I'm seeing mostly. Where I was in Indiana, we were starting to see some of the federal talking points coming down to the state level and kind of starting to, you know, have at least some impact in the conversations around what was going to happen in the classrooms in Indiana. I think as of right now, we're not in Colorado. As of right now, we're not seeing that. Really, the State Department of Education in Colorado has been very supportive, is really trying to push and hope to support the work that needs to continue to be done in the classrooms. And to one of the points I continue to make, which is there's a reason why we have elected school boards in each community. That local control is really important. And when the federal government on one hand says they want to dismantle the federal side of education, but on the other hand want to say we're also going to tell you what you should or shouldn't teach, those are competing ideas, right? And so I really believe the power for making those decisions should be at the local level, right? So the community in Loveland and the Thompson School District and Berthoud and these communities we serve, they elect our school board, and that school board hires a superintendent, and that superintendent's job is to kind of help to run the school district and make sure we're moving forward. And I believe that's where the real power should be on that. So I'll say for now, I don't feel like I've seen a huge push to change things. Now, do I hear the individual conversations? Do I talk to individuals who are pushing for things? Absolutely. And I will say when it comes to things like, especially, I think you talked about history, social studies is one of the areas that gets a lot of focus. My belief is we need to teach kids our history, right? We need to teach kids our history. There's a fundamental part of a democracy is teaching the history of our country, and that we're not perfect. Like as a country, we're never going to be perfect, but one of the things that's beautiful about our country is I think we have over our time as a country striven to be better as a country. And so I think for me, we need to teach kids how to think, right? Not what they should think, but how to think, and how to be critical consumers of information, how to be critical consumers of the news, and to make educated decisions about the things that are being put in front of them, because more and more what they read in the newspaper, what they see on the news, what they see on their websites and their social media can't completely be trusted as fact anymore. So teaching kids to be good, good consumers of information, and have that ability with that discretion to say, do I believe this or do I not believe this? And how should I research this further to make a good decision? And so I will continue to fight for that. I think that's how we build the next educated populace that's going to run this country, is by continuing to educate them in every way, but also teaching them critical thinking so they know how to question the things that are being put in front of them as fact. But no, I went to shorter answer is just, we're not getting a ton of pressure right now. Though I do hear it from individuals from time to time that they think we should do X or they think we should do Y. And that can be, like you said, it's people have an opinion on how we should teach math, and people have an opinion on how we should teach writing, and how we should, all of those things. But I have a lot of great educators in this district who are experts, who are the ones that I trust to sit down with and come up with the best way to educate our kids.
I hate to bring this up, but can you tell us about the Protect Kids Colorado?
I'm not sure if I'm familiar with it yet. It hasn't come across my radar necessarily.
Okay, well, you're lucky.
I probably shouldn't have said that out loud. It's going to happen now. I'm going to get a call.
Okay. You look it up. It's the kind of group you don't want to hear from.
Okay.
How is the violence that's happening, sometimes threatened, but sometimes real, affected planning, staff, students, activities?
Well, I mean, like I said, in the article I wrote for the paper, I mean, our kids and our staff walk into schools every day under this reality now that we live in education, that somebody's grievances might result in violence. That somebody who's upset about something, whatever that something may be, could result in violence. And it's not the place that I want our kids to enter school. I have 2 kids in the system, so every day I know I'm sending them to school they are having those thoughts, right? They know we have to do things like lockdown drills on a regular basis as a way to prepare for a reason. We wouldn't do it if we didn't have to do it, but we feel like we have to prepare. It's a real thing, right? We had some students across our district and across the country and across the state who participated in some walkouts regarding gun violence in schools recently. And I was proud of the kids for saying, this is important to us and we want to be able to make our voices heard. And they did it. Our students, their behavior was phenomenal, right? They did it the way it should be done. They went outside, they made their voices heard, they went back to class. They weren't disrespectful to one another. They weren't out there they were there for the right reasons, and they handled it well. And I appreciate that. That's how it should be done. There were, in the moments of that, there were some concerns that maybe there were some threats while those walkouts were happening. And so even the sadness of kids trying to exercise their ability to have their voices heard had a shadow of a threat to it. Now, credit to the people, our building principals, our safety and security team did such a phenomenal job of making sure that those were safe environments so these kids could exercise their right to have those protests, but keep our kids safe, right? That was our job, was keep them safe while they were doing that. And they did such a phenomenal job. So it's a specter in everything we do, right? We host a basketball game, or I mean, it's fall, so a football game, a volleyball match, those types of things. There's always a worry. Large, crowds of people are now a thing where you have to worry. I mean, recently, my daughter and I went to a concert, and while I'm in this large crowd of people, you now have this thought in the back of your mind of something can happen here, right? And we're committed to doing everything we can to make sure that we don't let that change the fact that kids should have the opportunity to go watch their peers play sports. But we have the responsibility to make sure we put as many safeguards as possible in there to keep that place safe. And so we have done some things, like we are using some weapon detection technology at our football games now. We are using some weapon detection technology at some of our different events. And in fact, after the horrible shooting that happened just recently here in Colorado at the high school, we've had some districts reaching out to us about the weapons detection technology that we're using and wanting to come and see how we're using it to better secure their facilities, especially when they're having large groups of people. So we're just trying to constantly stay on the cutting edge of the best practices for student safety and staff safety, and without maybe completely compromising what it means to be a student. I want our kids to have the full high school, middle school, elementary school experience that I got to have when this stuff wasn't a constant threat.
To get to things that are not part of the present danger, but modern, are you doing anything that has to do with regulating student phone use? And have you addressed issues concerning with AI in teaching and learning? Both of those are sort of modern, not having to do with polarization, but eventually they could.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, I think both. Yes, we're having conversations around all of that. I will say that phone usage it's a very interesting conversation as you get into these conversations around phones. And I'm of the belief personally, while I see there's great value in these things, there's a great value and potential value there. There's also a ton of danger, and there's a ton of distraction that is caused. I talk a lot about this when I'm meeting with kids, and they're bringing this up. In fact, I talked about it a little bit just recently. There's a myth out there called multitasking, right? We're teaching kids how to multitask. Well, the reality is your brain doesn't multitask. Your brain does something called task switching. So it moves from the task your teacher's trying to have you do to your phone, and then back to your teacher and to your phone. And the reality is every time you do that, you're actually using a part of your brain's capacity. The engine is getting worked harder because you're having to switch between tasks. And there's great data out there that when you are distracted by your phone dinging or vibrating or whatever it might be, it takes a percentage of time before you actually can fully get back on task to the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And there's great research about even if you don't look at the phone, the fact that it notified you and you don't even touch it, you still got distracted, and now it's pulled you away from your learning a little bit. So I do think we have to find a place where we can also meet the expectations, because there's the parent side of things, which is if there's a mass dangerous situation on my child's campus, I need them to have access to their phone, right? There is that belief out there. And so we are talking a lot about how do we find the happy medium of in class when learning is supposed to be happening, how do we have these phones in a way that aren't accessible to the kids? They're off. They're in a place where they don't even have a temptation to use them. And if we needed them for an emergency situation, they are available. So we're talking about the best way to do that. I think there's a whole nother layer that I want to continue to talk about with our parents around educating and helping our parents understand the dangers of social media, the dangers that are there for their children, regardless, even if your child's in high school, there's a danger there that we just need to continue to educate parents about, that I care very much about, because it is impacting things like student isolation. There's great research on the amount of time on social media and the relationship to things like anxiety and depression. So we're going to need to do some work to help educate parents on that. AI is this entire other animal that we're dealing with. There has actually been
Before you get to AI,
yes.
How are you educating parents? How are you trying to educate parents about the the isolation of the phones and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we've had just some brief introductory conversations as a team around what would that look like? How could we get some? I've used, there's an organization I've worked with in the past that actually does a lot of really great parent-driven types of lessons around this. And so I've had some conversations about maybe partnering with them, and they could be a resource that we're providing to our parents, because not every parent can come, to an event at a school. So I want to make sure all parents have access. So we're talking about some ways that we might be able to use this other organization to help us get the word out. So that's one. So we're having some conversations around that. The AI conversation comes up every time I go anywhere. The Lions asked me about it today. I think Rotary asked me about it 2 weeks ago. And I'll tell you my stance on AI first. For about 18 months now in the Thompson School District, there has been a task force looking at this issue, looking at everything that comes with AI and how that should impact what we do in the Thompson School District. Our next step is going to be bringing kids into that task force and getting kids' perspectives on this. Students this morning at my high school advisory council brought up AI and their concerns actually about AI. So my perspective is that our kids are going to move into a world where AI is part of their life. Right? It's going to be part of their life. It's probably going to be part of whatever job they do. It's going to be part of their existence. And so we can't put the blinders on as a district and say, we're just going to ignore AI, because then we're not preparing our kids for the future they're going to live in. But we do need to put guardrails in place. We need to teach our kids, when is it appropriate to use artificial intelligence in your schoolwork? When is it not appropriate? And if you are going to use it in those appropriate times, how do you cite that AI usage appropriately so that you're giving credit that you are? How do you use AI as a thinking partner to increase your critical thinking, not as a substitute for thinking? And so those are things we're talking about. How do we educate our teachers about how they can utilize AI? There's a great amount of resources for a teacher to use AI to take away some of the administrative types of tasks that teachers have to do, that take them out of the classroom, that take them out of doing what they got into this job to love. There's some ways AI can take some of that off their plates. And so how do we leverage those skills to make teachers' jobs better? So we're looking at all of it. And we're looking at identifying some district adopted artificial intelligence tools that will be the ones that students are allowed to use, that we have the ability to have some guardrails on, that we have the ability to have some controls. But we need to teach kids that just because AI told you it's true does not necessarily mean it's true. You have to be a critical thinker and actually read what that is producing. And you need to make sure that your voice is coming out in your work, not a computer voice is coming out in your work. So yeah, there's a lot of work going on around that right now as we speak.
I'd like to hear from the rest of you for questions for Dr. Heller. Go ahead.
Marilyn has a
Marilyn,
question.
go ahead.
How is this bond issue proposal different from the last one?
Great question. I'm happy to jump into the bond a little bit and answer, and I'll talk about it and then I'll answer any questions. So I'll start with a couple of things that I think are important to know. There's a lot of misunderstanding as I talk to people in and around the community around school funding, just in general. And I'll tell you that one of the biggest misunderstandings that I often hear from people is there's a belief that as property taxes or property values have risen, that school districts are getting more money. And the answer is actually not true. The reality of the way Colorado funds schools is as local property values, go up, that means the state has less they have to provide to a school district to meet the threshold that's been established. So there's a line that says, here's what Thompson School District should get. And then local comes up, and then anything that local doesn't provide, then the state has to fill in that gap, basically. Well, as property taxes and property values rise in a community, the state just has to provide us less money because there's less of a gap to fill. And so though our property values are going up and all those things are true across the state, across the country in many ways, the funding is not increasing with that. And there is no real mechanism within the funding we receive for things like buildings, maintenance, those types of projects. So we really have to go out to our community if we want to raise additional dollars outside of what we get from our funding mechanisms to do those projects. And so I know that the district went a year ago, and they went out for two different types of funding. We are only going out for one. So there's really two things that can happen. We can go for a bond, which is more for buildings, capital projects, renovations, that sort of thing. Or we can do mill levy overrides, which are really more about our operating budget. So do we need to hire more people? Do we need to do things just to run the school district? The mill levy override, we're not doing that this time. We're only doing a bond. And the bond that we are doing is basically, I'll use the phrase, no expected increase in taxes. And by that, what that means is, as a school district pays off some of their debt, pays off existing bonds, pays off existing debt, they have a debt capacity, an area that they can collect if the voters approve, that would not cause the tax rate to increase, right? So that's what we did. We chose a dollar figure. $99 million was the number that we were sure would not generate a tax increase based on the amount of property taxes and property tax values. I think it's important to know this is purely for capital building needs, critical infrastructure. So we kind of have three pots of money that this $99 million would go to. There's a section that we call critical needs. So that's things like roofs, HVAC, flooring, boiler replacements, roofs, all those different types of things. Then we have a safety and security pot of that $99 million that is for things like camera systems, the audio communication that allows SROs and the police department, when they come onto our campus, to be able to connect and communicate with our staff. There's also, I think many of you may have been in a building recently where the standard now when it comes to safety is secure vestibules, meaning you have to get buzzed in that front door, right? You get buzzed in the front door, and then there's a vestibule you're in, and you have to get buzzed past that door as well to get into the rest of the school.
Right.
Well, we have many of our campuses do not have that secure vestibule. So even if you get buzzed in the front door, you now have access to the entire building once you make it through the front door. So some of the money will go to adding those secure vestibules in schools that do not have them. And then we have two of our campuses in the district that are really at or over capacity, and those are in Berthoud. So Berthoud Elementary School and Ivy Stockwell Elementary School, really we're at the point where we have no existing capacity, and that community is growing quite quickly. So this bond would also add additional classroom spaces and additional capacity to both of those schools, so we can continue to meet the actual enrollment needs for those schools. So that's the big issue. Now, one of the things I get asked a lot about the bond is, okay, this $99 million, will that take care of all of your needs with building maintenance? And my answer is not even close. So the actual number today, based on today's prices, to do everything we need in all of our buildings across the district, and that's everything from adding air conditioning to the buildings that don't have it, to roofs, to sidewalks, all of the things that come with maintaining our buildings. The price tag is about $730 million for the Thompson School District right now. And so this bond of $99 million is just a slice off the top of our needs. And so I say this all the time to people. We're asking on this election, and this won't be the last time we're going to have to come to the community because the needs continue to grow. This $99 million, if it doesn't pass, let's imagine, I hope that doesn't happen, but if it doesn't pass, these same projects, this $99 million worth of projects, will cost more a year from now than they cost now. So that same $99 million will buy us less projects a year from now than it will this year. And so, we're going to do all we can. If it doesn't pass, then we will continue to do what we can to patch things up and, duct tape and effort to keep our buildings running. But we have a lot of failing systems of things that just haven't been taken care of for decades. This isn't the previous superintendent's fault. This is a long history of a lot of needs not being met in the district that need to get fixed.
How can we help?
Well, there is, of course, there's a community bond campaign committee, if you will, right? We as a school district, there's a community committee that kind of does a lot of the legwork at this point, and they're doing that work. I feel like one of my jobs is just to educate people on the what, right? Every voter has to make a decision what's right for them, and my job's not to tell anybody how to vote, because I respect the fact that taxes and those things are an issue, and I always want to be transparent, because though we're saying it's a no expected tax increase, there's also the reality, and I'm just going to say it, which is if this bond wasn't on the ballot, or if this bond doesn't pass, the tax rate will go down. And so people's tax bills will go down, at least from the Thompson School District portion. I can't control other people's portions, but our tax rate portion will go down if it doesn't pass, or if we weren't going forward at all. It is a no tax increase in the fact that we specifically picked a dollar figure that would not change our tax rate from what people are currently paying. And my job is to inform people of what the projects are. I think the TSD on our website, so if you go to tsd.org, we have a 2025 bond website on there where you can click, and patrons can go on and school by school see how much of the money is going to that particular campus and what are the types of projects that will be done on that particular campus. And so we're trying to do that so every parent, grandparent, community member can look and say, what's this going towards, and actually go school by school if they're interested. If you want to know what the neighborhood school by your house is going to be getting, you can actually go and click and see, what is Lucille Irwin Middle School going to be getting? What is Loveland High School going to be getting? So yeah, it's our effort. My job is to help educate as many people on what we're asking and why we're asking. But yes, we have a bond kind of community committee that's doing more of the advocacy work out there with yard signs and all of those things. And they would be the group to really try to engage with.
Okay. Other questions for Dr. Heller? Yes, Gwen?
Just kind of a follow-up to the bond issue. I did a study, so we do a pro and con, the League of Women Voters does. So I did the information thing on that. You said about if it didn't pass, maybe pushing off things a year and then they'd be costing more. How about there are critical needs out there that are going to have to be funded?
Yep.
Anyway, like
Yep.
the Accessibility Disability Act. I know there was a lawsuit against Loveland that there's going to be some critical needs that have to be addressed now, no matter if the bond's passed or not.
Correct.
Has the district looked at how that will be funded?
Yeah, so the operations team, the facilities team, they're obviously looking at worst case scenarios just as well as best case scenarios. And, you mentioned the ADA accessibility component. We're going to have to do some work there. Part of that work is embedded within some of the bond work. But we also have some dollars that have already been set aside from previous sales of previous properties. So I believe, the Monroe Elementary School sale, some other dollars are being set aside for some of those, like we have to do this. And if the bond doesn't happen, then we have to find some ways to do it. We're in the middle of it. Probably in the next couple of board meetings, we're going to be looking to hire an actual ADA expert to do a full assessment of every one of our campuses to really tell us what are your absolute critical accessibility needs that have to get taken care of versus the things that maybe you need to have a 5-year plan or a longer term plan. So that work is going to be happening. We know what some of those immediate things are. In fact, some of the immediate work has already started in some of these places. And so, the operations and the facilities team and the finance team they're looking at, if this doesn't happen, what are the things we don't have a choice, we have to do, and what decisions do we have to make? Are there other projects that we don't do because we don't have those funds? And that work is happening. It's the worries that I have are things like a roof that we can only patch it so many times before the roof fails. And then, when the rain comes like it did yesterday and it didn't stop the entire day, those roofs start to leak. And we have some of those places. Loveland High School has a roof that if it rains hard, water's coming in the classroom. And that's got to get fixed. And so we're going to have to find ways to make those fixes happen, even if the funding isn't there. We don't have $99 million worth of flexibility. We certainly don't have $735 million worth of flexibility to build in. So we'll do everything we can with the absolute critical things that we can afford. And then it falls to our maintenance teams to try to figure out ways to pull off miracles to keep things running.
Other questions?
Looks like Marilyn and
Marilyn.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the income side, I know Berthoud is growing, but what about the rest of the district? Are you having declining enrollment, which means you're getting less money coming in?
Yeah, declining enrollment is a real thing across the state of Colorado right now. and I'll say across the country, people are seeing declining enrollment. Birth rates are down, fewer babies being born, which means fewer kindergartners, preschool kids. Our kindergarten numbers actually came in right at or maybe slightly above what we thought they were going to be. So that's always good. Kindergarten's a good kind of sign for the future for us, but we are seeing schools that are down enrollment. I always say we're not seeing increased enrollment in the places we have space, right? We never see more kids coming in the places where I have empty classrooms where I could put them. But we have some places that are down in enrollment. So yes, that does mean less funding for the district. I'm part of a work group with the state to look at the funding model for Colorado in terms of the per pupil funding component and how to handle declining enrollment and what that means for funding. Because the challenge becomes, and if Loveland High School is 50 students down, that doesn't necessarily mean we need 50. We still need almost the same number of teachers. We still need the same number of custodians, the principal, like we still need all the same things. And so that's the challenge, right? Is our needs don't necessarily all go away just because enrollment decreases a little bit. So we're working with the state association to try to put together a proposal to take to the legislative body when they reconvene to talk about how we handle this moving forward. But yeah, we are seeing some enrollment decreases in some buildings and increases in other buildings. Yeah, overall we are down a little bit, not as much as I think other places have seen, not as drastic, but we are seeing that, and that's just a trend that's happening across the country right now.
Other questions?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Dr. Heller, I'm encouraged to hear that you are on that statewide team, number one. Kathy Marr and I, Kathy continues, I just have cut back a little bit, represent the league, the state league, in the General Assembly. So we advocate for our positions there. This kind of surprising to me. This year, funding for public schools held pretty well.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to read from several articles about how funding next year is in jeopardy. I don't know how public schools are looking with that. Do you have any?
Yeah, early conversations I've had with the folks who are regularly in conversation with the lawmakers are, we think maybe some optimism that this next round won't be a massive cut, but the following year is where there's a real worry about a major cliff for public education. I think even when the legislation came back together for a special session recently, they didn't touch public education with any of the cuts. Now, I will, with a caveat that they did do some cuts to Medicaid, and we receive, as school districts, we do receive some funding for Medicaid. We are anticipating we may see some reductions in the Medicaid funding that comes our way, specifically to serve our students with disabilities, that group. So we don't know if that's how that cut that happened at the state level will impact us, but we do anticipate it probably will affect K-12 public education in some capacity. But yeah, I think we're optimistic that maybe this coming session may not be terrible, maybe, but I don't know that we're hoping that we're going to see great increases either, right? We may stay whole or pretty close to it, but I think one of our biggest concerns is how that per pupil funding gets allocated, and especially for districts. It's one thing if you're a large metropolitan district and you have a loss of students. It's another if you're a small rural district and you have a loss of students, because they don't have any type of efficiency of scale to balance out some of those losses, right? You still need the person who's in charge of your busing. You still need the person who's in charge. So you still need those people. So the small rurals can really take a hit when we start to see those enrollment changes. So that's a big focus, I think, for a lot of superintendents in the state, is how do we work with our lawmakers to figure out the best way to fund schools given some of these enrollment challenges. But also, we want to still keep education at a high level for kids. And so you can only cut it so far before it will start to impact children.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? We have 10 minutes. Dr. Heller, I know that Loveland has, the city of Loveland has a young people's commission. I forget what they call them.
Yes, I don't know the name of it either, but I do believe so. Yes.
Are they connecting with you guys? They should.
So, I will say, and I don't know the history necessarily, but I know that there has not been, maybe in the last few years, as much of a relationship or a collaboration between City of Loveland and the Thompson School District. I don't know all the details there. I just know that my goal is to try to connect with them. And I know I've talked to a few of the council members, both the current council members and some that are running for office, that there's a desire to increase that collaboration and some of that. So yeah, I'm hopeful in the near future that youth council that they have will be something that I can engage with at some capacity. So yeah, I've always worked very closely with the municipal kind of governments that I've worked around. So yeah, that's my hope.
And then just talk if she doesn't call on you.
Carol, what would you like to say?
I have a question I'd ask.
Go ahead.
What would be your advice to teachers of history who are worried about teaching unpopular by the current administration and popular things? What is your advice about what they should do about that issue?
Yes, sir. So I'll tell you what I tell teachers all the time when that comes up. First of all, we have in the state of Colorado, we have standards for U.S. history and for our economics and civics. We have standards, and those standards have it's the history of our country, and they are very good standards. And we're going to continue to teach those standards. When I think we need to embolden and empower our teachers that controversial topics are going to come up in the classroom, right? Especially when you're teaching social studies. My favorite classes in school were my social studies classes where we were talking about current events, right? We were actually discussing the current events happening in our country and giving kids the opportunity to be critical thinkers and share the fact that there's diverse opinions in the room. I'm going to continue to protect the fact that I think we as a school district have an obligation to teach our history. We need to teach current events. We need to give kids the opportunity to think and talk about controversial issues and share thoughts and debate topics and teach them how to do that in a respectful way. I think one of the things, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, that we have lost a lot of is the ability to disagree without being disagreeable, to disagree with somebody without meaning that I have to not like that person. And so teaching our kids to get in a room together and have hard conversations about complicated, even controversial issues where there's maybe different viewpoints is part of, I think, education's job. I do not believe the teacher's job is to tell students what they should think about those issues or to try to influence how kids feel about those political issues. Our job is to help kids learn how to think and give them opportunities to engage in those conversations. It's delicate, though. I mean, I have some good friends who are still social studies teachers, and they are very nervous. I have friends across the country who do this work, and they are very nervous about the political climate and how that might impact them in the classroom and impact their jobs. But my job is part of my job is to protect teachers, to promote and protect the work that they do so that they can do that job. I have 2 children in the system, right? 2 children that are in the public education system here in Thompson. I want them to go to school every day and hear about diverse perspectives about issues. I want them to hear about diverse ideas and opinions. Mm-hmm. I want them to have the opportunity to learn how to speak their mind about an issue and do it in a way that's respectful. So again, that's been my guidance. I think as a district, we have some policies that actually provide some guidance and protection for our teachers when it comes to controversial topics in the classroom. And they really mimic a lot of what I just said, which is we need to give our teachers the tools so that they can lead conversations, facilitate discussions, not try to drive one viewpoint or another, but to let those conversations happen.
I think Jerry Wilson has a question.
I think he was just clapping.
Yeah, I think he was.
It was me, and I was clapping. I was loving it. So
okay. Well, I think teachers are going to need help in learning how to do that.
Yeah, there's a need to both learn how to do it. And I've said this before. I've had parents, I've met with parents in the past who felt like maybe a teacher stepped out of the line when it came to that. And my conversation is always, I'm going to look into it. I'm going to review all that. I'm going to make sure But I also want to always remind people, teachers are still humans, and they still we make mistakes, right? I was a teacher, and in the heat of the classroom discussion, all of a sudden you say something, you're like, I shouldn't have said that because that may have influenced the way a kid thought about something. They didn't. I have yet to find a teacher, and it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, that they're doing it as an intentional effort to, these words like indoctrination and influencing children and all that. I've never run into a situation where a teacher is doing that. I've run into teachers who are just trying to engage their students in rich dialogue. And sometimes the story that goes home to mom and dad is not exactly the way the story unveiled itself in the classroom. And, but yeah, I have been very impressed so far with the teachers that I've had a chance to go into their rooms and see the types of engaging conversations they're having with kids, the Socratic seminars, and these ways to get kids to really talk and share their ideas has been phenomenal, both here and in all over the country as I've gone into classrooms. So we have to continue to give teachers those tools, though, and know that we have their back as long as they're following our policies and they're teaching the standards and they're doing it in a way that allows for a lot of diverse viewpoints to be heard. Then we need to protect our teachers on that. Now, I will also say, and one of the things I do share a lot is we also have to be careful that we don't let diverse viewpoints come out in our schools at the expense of other people, right? So there's a time when a person could share a viewpoint that is now demeaning or putting down or harming another person. And a teacher's job is to say, like, hold on, we can have respect, we can have dialogue, but we're not going to put people down. We're not going to tear people down. So I think there's always that. And teachers are in a weird place now because of that, that they know that there's all these competing forces around the work that they do, and a lot of criticism. I say this all the time. I think there's a reason why less people are going into the college profession to be teachers, going into teaching colleges to be teachers. I think there's a reason why teachers are leaving the profession. And part of it is there's such a level of scrutiny on everything they do. And I will add, I think there's a tendency now more and more with this reliance on standardized testing to boil down the effectiveness and success of a teacher to how we did on a standardized test one day in the spring. I said that in my kind of opinion article, is there's more to what we do in education than shows up on a Colorado state test that the kid takes in April or May. And that's just one day in a kid's life, a snapshot on how much they know. And if that kid had a bad day, if that kid didn't eat breakfast, if that kid had something going on in their family's life, they may not have done their best on that day. And then we also have kids who those Colorado state tests just don't mean a whole lot to them, right? They care more about the teacher assessments they're doing in their classroom than this computer test that they're asked to take at the end of the year that has no impact on their future, on their graduation, on their life. And so though I do care about those results and I want us to make sure we're continuing to get better on how we score on those and how well our students perform, I want to make sure people remember there's a lot of other things that we do in schools, including assessing our kids in a lot of various really effective ways that are much more important, in my opinion. And I worry that every time we focus too much on a single test in the spring, makes it harder and harder for teachers to want to stay in this profession. When they see people criticizing their school because of an end of the year test, when they know how much their kids have grown over the school year, it makes it really hard sometimes for teachers to not get frustrated and downhearted about the work that they're trying to do.
I am so grateful that you are our superintendent.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Are there any other comments or
I have
questions?
one more
before we-
question.
Go ahead.
Sir,
Go
what
ahead.
would you say the attitude of the board and the administration is toward the Thompson Education Association? What are the relationships there?
Well, I can speak for myself and the people that I interact with on a daily basis. I think we have a great working relationship with the Thompson Education Association. I meet with the president of the Thompson Education Association at least once a month on a scheduled basis where we are meeting and sitting down. And then we talk all the time in between things. And she reaches out to me if there's something she thinks I need to know about. So we have a very good working relationship. I would never want to speak for the board, but I believe, based on the conversations I've had with each of the board members, that they're very supportive of continuing to have a strong, cohesive working relationship. I don't want it to be an us versus them type of relationship. That's not healthy. It ultimately harms kids. But there are certainly always going to be times when the district and our administration is trying to get something done, and the Thompson Education Association may not always agree with exactly the direction. And so that's why we get in the room and we talk through it and we try to find ways to find the best solution. I believe we're on the same team. I mean, I will say this. I believe that the TEA leadership and the members I've met with and the Thompson Education leader, or the district leadership, school leadership, all believe we are in this for the same reason, which is to do the best work we can for our kids.
Good.
Yeah.
Marilyn has a question, Fran.
Okay.
So there the scenario that you may have a student that is transgender and they want it to be addressed by certain pronouns, but the parents do not want that. That's a dilemma. Do you have a policy on that?
So we do have policies on it. When we get into the strong disagreement with the parent and the student, I'll be honest, no policy in the world is going to solve that dilemma. What's going to solve that dilemma is we need to get in the room together and talk about how we're going to best support the child. I say this every time the transgender conversation comes up, is my number one thing that matters to me is that every one of our kids comes to school and believes that that campus is a place where they are safe, where they are welcome, where they belong, and where they matter. And I don't care what their beliefs are. I don't care about their sexual. I care about them feeling like that place is theirs and they belong there and they matter there. I want our kids to feel supported. My job is to also work really closely with the parents to best meet those needs for those kids, because no matter how well I support them on their campus, if they don't feel supported in their home life and in their community, then we have other issues that are going to come up. So I have to work hand in hand with parents. I have actually, and I will be careful and not talk too much about details about it. I have worked in my previous district that I worked with early in my career when I was an assistant principal, worked through the situation that you are describing where I had a student that was transgender. It was even more complicated because one parent was very supportive and one parent was very non-supportive. And so I had a lot of my negotiating skills and my peacemaking skills came to the forefront as I tried to continually bring that group together to make sure we were keeping our focus solely on that student and what need was best for that student, so that they could walk through their high school career and feel successful and feel supported and ultimately graduate and have a future. And so I talk to people a lot, like my personal beliefs about what's right or what's wrong, my religious beliefs, any of those things don't matter. My job is to support our kids and make sure that they have a place that they're safe every single day. Now, laws and things like that may change, and we're going to do our best to continue to follow those laws and do what we have to do by the legal requirements. But we're also going to do it in a way that makes sure kids are valued and supported, no matter what their beliefs are, no matter who they are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking the question.
There's somebody running for the board from Protect Kids Colorado, and I think you should look into that so you're prepared.
Okay.
Anyway, any
Yeah.
other questions? This has been tremendously helpful and hopeful for us. I think we're all really pleased
Yes,
that you are in that position.
Well, I look forward to the opportunity to meet any and all of you in person at some point, and not
Okay.
across a screen. It's wonderful that we have this technology to do this, but I look forward to meeting some of you in person. And feel free to reach out if there's ways that I can help. If there's ways I can be involved, engaged with the work that you all are doing. And I would say that to every community group we have. Part of my job is to be a liaison between what the district is doing and the community. And so thanks for the opportunity tonight.
Okay, great.
You've
There are
done a
no-
wonderful job tonight, making us feel like we really are part of the Thompson School District and can really appreciate you as a leader of that Thompson District. Thank you so
very
much
much.
for being here.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah,
Kathy?
thank you.
Just applauding.
Okay, Marilyn's applauding too, I think.
I want to echo that what Carol said. I agree with her. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Well, thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening.
okay.
Thank you.
We see more
Thank you.
applause going up the screen. We really appreciate this. Thank you very much, Dr. Heller. You will
Thank
hear
you.
from us. And we
Great.
will
Have a
try
great
to
night.
support. Okay,
Thank
good
you.
night.
Bye-bye.
Okay. I'll stop the recording.
Yep, yep. Thanks, Kathy.